What is up? What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to Blood Splatter Chatter Live. This is the pre-party, the kickoff to our big summer event, Summer Abroad, where we're going to be talking about foreign horror for the next 6 weeks, doing 8 foreign horror films in 6 weeks. And what better way to kick it off than an American-made movie that fits the theme, double feature, Eli Roth, Hostel 1 and Hostel 2. Joining us first, Mr. Rockin Robbie Billups. My brother, what's happening, dude?
Yo, I'm so excited to be here. Let me break down Hostel 1 for you.
You're such a fucker.
Those are inside jokes right there. What up, brother? Appreciate you making it right after doing this is a marathon stream night for Rockin Robbie ends too. You guys just wrapped up a fantastic show. If you're into comics, make sure you're over there checking out what Robbie's doing on Pop Culture Philosophers. And my brother, Missing Link. Also, if you're into comics, from Supreme Clientele. What up, my brother?
What up, fellas?
You got a review? Yeah.
No, I was gonna say I'll save it.
Yeah, make him wait for it, bro.
My man Stu. What up, brother?
What up, bro? What up? So glad to be here with y'all this evening. I really love these movies.
Oh, good God. All right. Let's get into this thing. So, Hostel 1, Hostel 2. Basically, when these came out, I remember that obviously they were a huge fucking deal. And I feel like I have a harder time than most people like remembering how I felt about a movie. But I do remember like being into these movies when they came out. And the name Quentin Tarantino was probably the thing that drew me and a lot of people to the theater in the first place to see it. But this is 3 years after Eli Roth came out with Cabin Fever. And evidently Quentin Tarantino saw that and he loved it. And he reached out to Eli Roth. He befriended him and they just became friends. And at the time, Eli Roth is just getting offer after offer for horror remakes. They want him to do The Fog. They want him to do a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, Last House on the Left. And Quentin Tarantino, luckily, is saying no, and kept on getting him to just come up with an original idea. And he kind of pulled this out like, I've had this idea for a while about this thing in Europe with people traveling. He didn't really like love it. And he told it to Quentin Tarantino. And he's like, dude, that's your movie. He's like, this is fucking brilliant. And in my opinion, like these movies they get a bad rap, both of them. But just from talking to you three this week, none of you guys are giving this movie a bad rap. I can tell we all really, really enjoy these flicks, but a lot of people don't. They both are hovering around like 50-60% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I really feel like they don't get the respect that they deserve, and that people just kind of lump them in with the torture porn and they remember them differently. This is like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where people think it's super bloody and super gory. And don't get me wrong, Hostel 1 and 2, they have plenty of that, but it's way more restrained than what I remembered. And it's done more sophisticatedly, or whatever, however you say that word, than I remembered as well. But the dude that I know is a big fucking apologist for Eli Roth in every way, shape, or form. And I know a lover of these movies, Mr. Rockin Robbie. What's just your thoughts on the man himself, Eli Roth, and then Hostel 1. We're going to start with that one, obviously. Hostel 1, your history with it, and how was it for you on the rewatch, brother?
Well, I love Eli Roth. Like, I love his films. Cabin Fever, I remember when that came out. I saw it in the theater. I really enjoyed it. I remember the movie theater. I remember the poster for Hostel. And it said Quentin Tarantino presents, and everybody was like, oh, this is going to be like the next Saw. It's going to be super gnarly. It's going to be all this kind of stuff, right? And I remember watching it and loving it. Absolutely loving it. And every time I've watched it since, I just love it more and more and more. What I love about the first one is that, and first of all, I'm probably the biggest Eli Roth fan that most of y'all know. Like, I love pretty much all of his movies. I think the dude is super fucking hot. I've met him. It was a highlight of my life was meeting Eli Roth and having a very brief chat with him about The Prowler and Thanksgiving and its influence. But the first Hostel movie, what I love about it is my first impressions of it were, this is like a sex comedy for like the first act. And then it starts getting very gnarly, right? And it's playing with certain fears that Americans in particular have about like going overseas, right? But it's also playing with this like idea that Americans have apparently when they go overseas, where they're like, I'm a fucking American. The rest of the world don't give a shit, man. Like, that's not a bonus. You're not going to get a gold star for that, right? I love how bold the film is, and it is bold. It's not as gory as one might think. And I do hate Hostel. There's my copy of number 1 right there. Hostel is torture porn by what that term means, right? I think the term, though, is dismissive, right? And I think that it's a generalization that doesn't necessarily work. Saw and Hostel were 2 movies that we look at the history of horror, right? American horror cinema, right? And then that's what we're talking about tonight, because you're about to get into the other countries in the coming weeks, right? But one of the things about American horror is that the biggest waves of it that work come after big societal upheavals or changes, right? Like the Great Depression led to like the launch of the Universal monster movies, right? There's elements of that in those movies, right? The atomic scare led to things like Them, and you know, those giant like ant movies, and Creature from the Black Lagoon, and you know, stuff like that, right? Then you have the post-Vietnam era where you're getting Last House on the Left, where you're getting Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween, right? Phantasm. These are movies that are picking up on that zeitgeist, right? The distrust of the excessive Wall Street and government of the 80s, right, led to like a very colorful kind of flamboyant horror, right? In the 90s, in American culture, if you remember, the 90s seemed pretty fucking easy for most of us, right? And there weren't too many great horror movies in the 90s, right? But then 9/11 happened, and it changed things again. And the response post 9/11 to horror is torture porn.
Right.
That's what it is, right? And I think that term is dismissive, and I don't like that term, but I will concede that that's what this is. It's Saw, Hostel. They changed horror. These are at the front. Not only is Eli Roth such a horror fan, dude, I could listen to that dude talk about horror movies for hours. I have. Literally, right?
Yeah, me too, yeah.
Yeah, and he just loves doing it. He does like 4 fucking commentaries on each of these movies. He just loves even talking about his own movies.
Which is why I'm so annoyed. Just to anyone out there that is interested in getting these, don't buy the double feature like 1-pack, because you don't get anything. You don't get, it's like $4 that I paid for it on eBay, but you don't get any commentaries, any special features whatsoever.
Dude, these are so old school. You can see because it says like experience high definition on both of them. Like that means that's like first wave Blu-ray right there, buddy.
Right.
But like I love Eli Roth's take on horror as a whole, and I think it's so amazing and appropriate that he's one of the forefronts of that wave of horror that happened. Like post 2001, post 9/11. I love the movie. I love how it plays with your expectations. It starts off and it's bold because it's not just the violence. It's the nudity. It's the sexual nature of this film, right? It's exploitative, but it's actually making a point about exploitation, because what the dudes are doing to the women in the first act is what happens to them in the second and third act, right? It's a perfect mirroring of it. I think this movie is smarter than the general audience thinks it is. I think, you know, the first one is heavily influenced by Japanese horror, in particular Takashi Miike, right? And Eli Roth is pretty much the dude who got me into Japanese horror. I said Italian horror, I think, but I meant Japanese, right?
You said
Japanese.
Okay.
And he makes a cameo later in the film.
Yeah, he
does.
does.
He's in the bong bar or whatever.
Yeah, the second one is influenced by Italian giallo and shit like that, right? But the first one is straight up like Japanese horror influenced. There's a lot of references to other films, a lot of repeated shots, stuff like that. He did that in Cabin Fever. Actually, no, he did that in Cabin Fever where he was like riffing on like certain scenes and shots from like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and stuff. Hostel, he wanted it to be his own kind of thing, so he didn't do that, but he did try to take that vibe and feel of like something like Audition or the J-horror stuff that was happening at the time, Ju-on, Ringu. You know, he's the one that got me into that, because I got into Eli Roth majorly because he was part of that Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments thing. You can find it, I think, on YouTube or somewhere to stream or to watch, but like it was a show that came out in the early 2000s where they were talking about basically the top 100 horror movies. Eli Roth was all over that bitch, and I didn't quite know it at the time, but I thought that dude was fucking gorgeous, and I love the way he speaks about horror. He's not a dude I want to fuck, but he's a dude that I want to be Eli Roth. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the dude I want to be. I love him. He's great. Hostel is amazing. I love the bold nature of it. I love the thematics of it, the music, the way it vibes with like old school horror, but it was something new. It's groundbreaking, and it's. I'm very proud of my boy Eli for being at the tip front of not just a Dick Foreskin, but of an American horror revival in a way, right?
Definitely. I heard the argument. I thought at first I was like, "Oh, that's crazy." That I had seen this on a series where they were covering the evolution of the slasher subgenre, and it does kind of make sense. What they were arguing was pretty much after Scream had run its course, and then Scary Movie came along, you couldn't make a serious slasher for a bit, and that's when you got Saw and you got Hostel, and there are these two franchises that, if you look at it, this is structured a lot like a slasher, where you've got these teens being picked off one by one, but it's such a different vehicle to get to it, and just a different way to generate scares. But hell yeah, man, Missing Link, my brother, I know that this is pretty much your era. This is right in your wheelhouse. So 2005 Hostel. What's your history with it, and how was the rewatch?
Okay, I'm good. I remember loving this movie, man. I was just turning 17 or about to turn 17. I just remember this being a big deal. Like, I thought like this was like, a horror movie for our generation,
Right.
I feel like I was never too keen on horror movies up until around, it was like 28 Days Later, and then like 2 years later was this and like Saw, so that kind of like kickstarted my semi interest in horror. But I mean, I loved this as a teenager, it made me want to go to Amsterdam and hopefully shit like that might happen to me. My story played out a little bit differently, but no, I thought it was a brilliant movie. It was different. I like that comparison you said about it being a slasher. They just go about it in a different way, but like the teenagers still get picked off. There's a lot of sex in there.
Weed.
There's a few lines. Yeah, drinking, partying. That's like what the whole they go out there for that those core partying essentials. There was like two lines that I was like, maybe it's just because times have changed, but I was like, oh, you couldn't do that today. It was mostly when they're friends at the bar with the dude and like, yeah, and
he calls him
it was just that
word ass elf. Like, yeah, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up. This is actually one of the things I wanted to get into. That let's like, what did you guys think? As far as what did we just talk about on your channel? Oh, Tropic Thunder. All of the inappropriateness going on in that movie, all of the slurs that were being used are used for a reason, and they're intentional. And there's a lot of the stuff in here, like the homophobia and like the over broiness, and like, oh, some of that I think is intentional, but the use of the homophobic slur, I don't know if that's just a sign of the times. That's like when an era where we were just kind of growing out of the use of that word as a culture, but I don't know if there is a point to it. You know what I mean? Are they making a comment on that, or is that done just because that's
I think it's just a sign of the times type of deal, in my personal opinion.
I think it's a sign of the times, but it works with it too, because what they're doing is he's luring you in to the beginning of this film where you're like, oh, it's me and my bros. How cool would that be to go to Amsterdam and smoke a lot of weed and fuck prostitutes, sex workers, and all this kind of, how fun is it? Oh no, that's not fun. I wouldn't like it if it was done to me. Not at all, right? And so I do think that the use of the F word, what you're talking about, right?
Right.
I do think that is definitely a sign of the times. Same thing with Tropic Thunder. Like if Ben Stiller and Justin Theroux wrote that movie today, they wouldn't do that bit.
No,
you know what I'm saying? But it is intentional to like it's broy as fuck. And this is the thing, I fucking hate this. Everybody says this, Eli Roth, oh, that fucking bro dude who does those fucking horror movies with the titties and the fucking, the slurs and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, that dude who's like so fucking clever that he lured you into a fucking movie that you thought you were down for and then made you feel the exact same way that those women would have been felt. Well, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like I think it's that particular usage is of the time, but as a whole, the way that first act lures you in, reels you in is a very intentional.
I think I agree, because I was on the fence, but I wasn't going to defend it. It's like, oh no, he's doing it on purpose, especially because the way the one killer puts his hand on his leg and his really like violent reaction to it. No touching, don't touch. Which I worked at a strip club for years, and I heard that over and over. No touching. I'm like, oh god, I got it. But that made me think that maybe he is being a little bit more clever with it than I had given him credit for. But yeah, I don't know about that part. But Steph, did you have more on your overall thoughts, or just on what we're talking about, brother?
I did think there's a little subtext there because remember they're at the bar and he like, I just wanted to apologize and puts his hand on his leg.
Yeah.
And he did have a like he was like, whoa, bro, you just touched your leg. It wasn't even a sexual advance. Like, calm down. Like,
well, he was.
So I think there was some subtext there. That is true. That is true. That is true.
Like that.
Trying to be closer to the salad. Yeah.
I did address that, bro, that's bothering me. But no, I think it's a great movie, game changer, up there with the influential horror movies in the last 20 years. Modern horror movies. It's definitely up there, top 10, if not top 5 for me.
Hell yeah, man! I think it's one of those things. You can't. There's going to be a lot of people that criticize Eli Roth. No matter what you think of Eli Roth, you will never talk about Harry. Well, you'll never talk about horror.
Yeah, look at Robbie's icon. Look at Robbie's icon, though.
You'll never talk about horror from that era without mentioning Eli Roth and his impact. You have to. He was such a key figure of the time. And I said before, like, just because those movies and how brutal and how bro-y they were, that was the horror that we needed at that time. Like Robbie was saying, for whatever reason, coming out of 9/11 after that, we wanted to see this, and we wanted to see Kiefer Sutherland fucking torturing motherfuckers on Fox, like all day and all night. Like that's what there was, like a violence in the air at that time. Steph, you're on mute, brother.
You're mute, brother.
Thank you, guys. I was gonna say, you reminded me of the 9/11 thing. This was that paranoia, the fear was still rampant at the time in American culture. So it's like, Americans weren't really going anywhere for like the first 5 years after 9/11. So it was like it played on that paranoia of like everyone's out to get Americans when they step outside of the zone.
And it's afraid of the world, afraid to travel, and afraid of the world and the rest of the planet. There was a very like isolated, not like in a negative way, and like a comfy, cozy feeling before 9/11, where it's like we're secure here and they don't fuck with us. We fuck with them, but they don't fuck with us. And it really did change the way, like we all felt a little less safe, obviously, after that. But Stu, my brother, from another, what's your thoughts on the rewatch and your history with Hostel 1?
So I did see this one in theaters, and I echo what everybody said about it being a moment in horror, because I wasn't seeing like every horror movie in theaters at that time, only those big events. And I remember this one being a big event. I remember, when you pitched it in the back chat or whatever, dude, my first thought was that scene with the Achilles tendons, man. That was so visceral to me. I never forgot that. Like that was such a great visual. And I agree with what Robbie said. I do think, despite like the surface level broism, I think it is a smarter movie than people give it credit for. And I love like how Inja said her favorite quote was, I get a lot of money for you. That makes you my bitch. When she literally walks Paxton into the spot at the end. I love how it empowered the women in this movie. And like, like the gore was there, but it was also like at times, it was so many different types of movie. Like there was suspense and thriller mode, and like I just love the way it built, you know, to the climax, and I love the way it. I know we're going to get into it, but I love the way it carried over. I really enjoyed watching these back to back. And seeing like, you know, how they kind of pulled back on that universe and took a look at the bigger picture. But yeah, just excellent, man. It was so it was, like I said, you know, that there's some like slightly cringy moments with some of the dialogue, but regardless, like I loved it. I really enjoyed the rewatch, and going back over it just reminded me why it was so visceral and moving in the first place. So yeah, I loved it.
Hell yeah, brother, dude. I think what am I trying to say? The subtleness of it, that's the biggest thing that really caught me off guard that I wasn't expecting. I expected, first of all, for there to be a lot more gore, a lot quicker in both of these movies.
Yes,
They're
agreed,
really
same.
restrained on it. You get to a half hour deep in Hostel 1 before all you see is dude's head.
And I remember thinking that at one point I was like, man, like he's taking a minute to get there.
Yeah. Here's one thing I want to ask you guys. If you take yourself out of like knowing what you saw in the previews going up to this or what you had heard about this movie, like if you had never seen this movie or heard anything about it and you watch it, at what point, because that's one thing that really impresses me is the way he really builds out the mystery and like the tension behind that mystery of what the fuck is going on. It builds up like really, really well. But like at what point in the movie do you think you would fully know everything that's going on? You know what I mean? Because they reveal things very slowly until maybe you get to where you meet the American guy and he really lays it out. Like you'll know everything at that point, but you could have pieced it all together before that. But it's a slow process is what's interesting to me.
It's when Jay Hernandez's character Paxton goes back to the hostel the next day after his friends have checked out. And he goes into the room, his new room, and it's the same.
Yeah, I love that. I love that scene. That
so the girls walk by him. Oh, we're going to the spa, and you're like, wait a minute. That's exactly
that eliminates all doubt right there. That's very true.
It's cool though, right? Just the way that they kind of slowly string things out. And I remember specifically, like I remember the first time I saw it, or maybe it was from the previews, but thinking there was one killer. You're so trained at that point in 2005 to think there's one person behind this. So like when they show the first guy you see and they're cutting someone up, that's this guy and he's got all these people working for him. Yeah. So that is a really original idea that we kind of take for granted at this point, but it was so fucking original at the time.
Well, you know, the genesis of this movie is that Eli Roth wanted to make a movie about the backpacking culture in Europe, right? Like people that like young, privileged fucking American kids that go to Europe or whatever, and they backpack across the country for a summer or for a year because they got a trust fund or obviously these dudes got money.
Yeah, they don't ever once complain about it. Like that's one thing I noticed. These guys never once were like, hey man, we got to
redirect our whole goddamn summer vacation and go to Slovakia instead of Barcelona. And they're like, let's do it. Me, I would be like, I ain't got the money.
Yeah,
for that,
man.
Like, I planned this to the teeth, right?
Exactly.
But so he wanted to make a movie about that and the creepy nature of a hostel. He didn't know what he wanted to do. Maybe at one point the hostel was going to be like a vampire like house, right? Like a like a nest of vampires.
Oh,
was like,
really?
Is there a killer loose in the hostel? Something like that. He knew that Hostel was the name. That was the approach. But then Harry Knowles, who was the dude who ran Ain't It Cool News, if y'all remember that website, that ancient website from back in the day, he showed Eli Roth. They became friends. And that's a cool thing. Eli Roth like will become friends with like critics and become friends with fans and shit like that, right? And I'm just got my fingers crossed, brother. So I really do. Eli, if you're watching, come on, man. We met in Orlando. I was wearing the Prowler shirt. Let's hang out. Let's do some shows together. But Harry Knowles took him on this website where it was this place in Eastern Europe where you could pay $10,000 to go into a room and shoot somebody in the head.
Right.
And it was like somebody who maybe had a terminal disease or somebody whose life wasn't going well. And they would sign up for it. They would, but like, they were like, this seems very real. And that's what took the direction into this. And also I want to point out, I love Inja's idea that the first main character, and I love so many people try to do the Alfred Hitchcock Psycho thing where you introduce a main character and then kill them. I don't know of anybody else who did it better or as good or almost as good as Alfred Hitchcock did than Eli Roth here in this movie. Because when that dude died, I was not ready for that. Like everything led us to believe this is the main character. This is the story we're following. Even so much to the point that Jay Hernandez is a background character until he takes over. Right. So I really like that aspect, but I love her idea that dude was it Josh? I can't remember the main character's name, but that maybe he is kind of a closet case, right? The way, if you really kind of look at it, that's an interesting reading. Like if it's queer coded or something, because
that's kind of how I read it. The way when he reaches out and touches his leg the second time,
and the fact that he doesn't want to like
he's real shy about
a lot of the stuff. Like I don't, and he enjoys sex with what's her name, and who wouldn't, right? Especially under the influence of all the drugs that they fucking gave him. You know what I'm saying? But like, I think there's a case for that.
Even his reaction, like I don't think any of us would react that way if somebody, even if a stranger put his hand on my thigh, I might move it away, but I'm not going to freak.
It depends on how he eats the salad, Verno. It depends on how he eats it.
Really good point.
Like, what the fuck was that, dude? Jesus.
Fun fact: that guy, he played not the Jim Carrey character, but the other dude whose name I'm losing in Dumb and Dumberer. He played that dude. The main character from Hostel, the one that dies first, played the Harry character in Dumb and Dumberer.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
Doesn't this movie also have a lot of like, I think Adam Green took a lot from this movie in the first Hatchet.
Oh, for sure.
If you think about how Hatchet is formulated and structured, especially with like bro-y frat boy, like sex trip kind of thing that leads to disaster.
Right. As far as you talking about them pulling off the Psycho thing, that is one bit that I heard that Eli or Quentin Tarantino, I think in a conversation that they had together that did a podcast, that was Tarantino's idea, telling him, you got to do Psycho. You got to do the Psycho. No one's done it as well since. I think that was one thing when I watched this like a handful of years ago and I didn't enjoy it as much as I did this time. I don't think that worked for me as well. And I think it was, I don't know, watching it this time, I really respected how finely, how well written it was for the guy that becomes the main character. It's a pretty subtle performance that he does leading up to that, where he's kind of the douchebag. He's kind of the guy that you're not supposed to like, that's leading the guy that we are supposed to like to do things that he doesn't want to do, but he's not. He's still likable while he's being that character. And the other guy is, neither of them are really, really likable. That might be my biggest ding on the movie, or one of my very few dings, is neither of them are super memorable or like great. They're both good. They're both serviceable, if not more than serviceable. But obviously they could have been better in both.
Well, the most memorable and likable character is Oli.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
I wish he was in there a little bit more. To be honest.
Same. Yeah.
Can you give us a
Yeah, of course, my horse. he had to go, unfortunately. All right, well, let us go ahead, and if you guys have anywhere you want to take this before we move on, but let's just send this thing around. Let's rate it. Stu, I'm going to start with you, and we'll swing it back around. Robbie can finish this off. I was about to get so gross with where I went with
what are we doing? Are we doing 5 out of 5 or yeah, definitely 5 out of 5 for me, man. I just love this. This was fantastic to revisit. Just a joy, it was memorable once again, and I love how it just slowly transforms from one thing to the next. You don't know what to expect. It keeps you guessing, and like ultimately what it leads into with number 2. So I love the world building and how that's cool. Like, that was cool getting that backstory from Robbie about like how the story came to be,
right?
Because you can definitely see it's 2 parts, like, you know what I mean, and like how he married those is brilliant. So
he also was originally planning on doing it in like a mockumentary style for a little bit, and then they started researching into it, like, oh, we're gonna try and make this as legit as possible and really get into like vacation gone wrong stories. And the more they looked into it, like, this fucking almost barely happens. So like, let's just ditch that idea and we'll make it up as we go. But that would have been interesting. Obviously, I'm glad they didn't do that, because I don't need another found footage type movie like this. But Steph, your rating and final thoughts, my brother.
I'm gonna give this one a solid 4 out of 5. There's a lot to respect about it, but I think like any qualms people had with the first one are kind of like rectified in the second. So just that being said, I got it. Very solid movie, but I find the second one. Robbie's right this time. I know he's been saying this, but this the first I didn't really believe him before this rewatch, but the second is superior. So with that being said, just because of that, it's already a strong movie, but any problems I think people had with the first one are, ironed out in the second one clearly. So solid 4 out of 5.
Hell yeah, brother. Inja's got an interesting point. Was the entire town in on it? I think the entire hostel was definitely in on it.
I feel like that's the
Their
question we get
reach.
answered in too.
Yeah. And it's not the entire town, but most of the town.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they got most of them in there.
Because they don't like Americans, y'all.
Those
Right?
suck.
They don't give a shit about us.
They
Like,
fetch the highest price.
We're very entitled fucking people. Anybody that ever worked in retail, think of the most entitled person you fucking had to deal with. That's how Americans are when they go overseas on trips, man.
But in our defense, and I'm saying this right as I'm about to try to.
Hey, I'm proud to be an American, brother.
Yeah. Well, okay. If
God bless the USA,
I'm 40 years old, so like the whole time, people have a hard time like realizing what the goddamn rest of the world was like. It wasn't as fucking developed. When I was a kid, China was fields and people wearing funny hats. Like the world has come a long way since, and plus we just didn't know. Like we were raised just being like, yeah, you were the best by far. We're like, oh, okay. And like, like, I don't know. And maybe we fucking kind of were a little bit in a lot of ways, but that is why we walked around like that forever. 9/11 is the thing that really woke us up and was like, all right, you guys are being really fucking cocky. And you know what I mean? You can't be number one forever. And it really was like the way I personally felt about America and just us and myself and everybody was way different and more cocky before that. Yes. So I kind of get where that attitude comes from. And any 60-year-old man, forgive them. You know what I mean? They can't help themselves.
They can't even get their dick hard anymore, guys. So let's just calm down.
But Robbie, my brother, final thoughts and your rating, brother.
I really love Stu's enthusiastic 5. I couldn't quite give it a 5, but let me break some stuff down here. I love the themes of this movie, right? Like you were just talking about, like, don't get too big for your britches, right? Just because we are in America, we have a very soft life, okay? And Eastern European countries, those people didn't grow up with a soft fucking life, right? And I know there's a younger generation out now that may not remember this, but there was a lot of turmoil in Eastern Europe in the 80s and 90s when we were growing up, right? Like there are people that work for me at my comic shop didn't even know East Germany and West Germany were a fucking thing, right? So there's a hardness to life in other places of the world. And in America, we have a very soft, cushy fucking life, right? So I love that idea of once you leave your safe space, Americans, like, do not think that everything's going to go your fucking way. You see elements of it there's elements of American Werewolf in London in this film, right? Like there's elements, right? But so I love that theme. I love the theme of like the exploitation, like the main character or the guy who we think is supposed to be the main character, right? Is it Josh? Is this? I'm tripping. Why do I remember Paxton, but I don't remember the other guy's name?
Right.
Well, I thought it was funny when I watched Hostel 2 when he's like, my name's Paxton. I'm like, I never fucking heard that in the first one. Yes, it's Josh. Josh.
Okay, cool. So I did know it. Never doubt yourself, Robbie. Unless you're in a foreign country. That's one thing this movie did. I don't want to go to Eastern Europe at all. I don't give a shit. I'll never visit Russia. I will never fucking, you know what I'm saying? Like no fucking way. I'm sorry. If I ever get into Eastern Europe, it's to go see Castle Dracula in Romania and then get the fuck out as quickly as possible.
Which is why, like, this movie did not really help relations with Eastern Europe.
No, definitely
not thrilled with Eli.
Definitely not building bridges with the Soviet bloc on this one.
Yeah, and I like the literally Josh says when he's being approached to go to the brothel and he's like, paying money to go into a room and do whatever I want with a person. It's not my idea of a good time. That is exactly what happens to him, So I love that kind of Eli. This is a smart film. Eli's a smart dude. He's not just sexy. He's not just a great filmmaker. He's fucking smart. Okay. And I don't think I think he is like a true, not just expert on horror, but he is a true trumpeter of horror. What's the fucking word I'm forgetting right now? Like
Ambassador.
an ambassador. Yes, he's an ambassador for horror, right? He's out there like he got me into a lot of cool stuff.
Me
right?
too.
Just
His
hearing him talk.
podcast, for anyone that hasn't checked out the History of Horror,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
also a TV show, well worth your time.
And I love how the movie takes you by surprise structurally. It lures you in. And when I first watched this movie, I'm like, what, 22, 23, 24, something like that. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I know I'm in for a horror movie, but man, I love horror movies that push boundaries, that raise up taboos, that like are like, they like to be crude, they like to be exploitative, they like to be transgressive. This is a very transgressive movie. Think about this, man. We're not far removed. You mentioned scary movies. We're not scary movies happening at the same time, like that franchise, right? You were not far removed from Urban Legend and Valentine, these fucking cookie cutter, safe ass Scream wannabes, right? Like I fucking hate that era of 90s horror.
There's
There's
a
a part of it.
Thanksgiving 2023. Yeah, I know, man. I'm
Well, but he did it a little bit more gnarly than they did. No, he did that. No, you're right. He did exactly that, but he did it differently. Go back and watch our video. I mentioned it, I think. But I would say, God, I love the structure. I love the visuals. Dude, the first act of this movie is so colorful. And as act 2 and 3 progress, all the color gets drained out of it, man. And the gore effects are great. I can't give it a perfect score because I do think the fucking eye cut is the dumbest thing.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, let's take a moment. It's been intense. Let's just have a moment of fucking laughter.
You know what? I was thinking about that because we talked about that eye scene, you and I, a few nights ago for a second. He is like, for comic book fans, I feel like he's like the Donny Cates of the horror world, where he's the type that's going to sit around with his buddies.
Dude, that's a great call,
like,
bro.
bro, dude. He's going
What
to
if?
off the Empire State Building, bro. It's going to be crazy. Like, he's that kind of guy. But that's the moment where it's like, this is stupid. This doesn't make any sense. But people talk about it to this day.
Yeah.
People
There is
but it's still like I still like her seeing her reflection and being like, damn, they really fucked me up. You know what I mean? Like you felt for her in that moment, like like when she finally saw like herself and what they did to her.
You need that moment because Eli Roth was absorbing a lot of Japanese horror at the time, and that is totally something that would be in a Japanese horror movie. Right.
Yeah.
Plus,
like the weird yellow fucking semi-fluid that comes out of there, man. Like it's got chunks in it, man. I'm telling
that's
you.
also a good moment for the guy who ends up becoming the main character, Paxton, because he's telling that story earlier where this kid was drowning and he didn't go save him. Now he has that moment to go back and save her, which I did not get the first time or before previous watches. I never understood why the fuck is he telling this story about this kid drowning?
He's the main character. He's got the arc. You know, we think it's going to be this dude's arc to actually go out there, get laid, and get over his ex. Very Hatchet, right?
He was in something funny that made me want to bring it up.
Who, Jay Hernandez?
Yeah, he was like, oh my God, he's this guy?
Oh, he's in Suicide Squad.
Yeah, who is he? He's the
El Diablo or whatever,
fire guy
right?
in Suicide Squad.
Fire guy.
Oh yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild.
I love this movie so much, so I'll keep talking about it. But I just got to say, like, I do love this movie. I think it's great. 4.69.
Booyah. Booyah. I love the score. So 4.69 from Robbie, a 5 from Stu, a 4 from Missing Link. And I really, really fucking enjoyed this movie. I loved the ending too. Everything at the end was really just like bam, bam. They tied up all these loose ends really quickly and really satisfyingly. He's the type, like something I've said this before. I like having this reaction from a horror movie. Oh, you know what I mean? That like cringe and laugh at the same time. And
he's that me, man.
Yeah, he's that kind of guy. And the second one, when he fucking shoots that kid, I don't know if that makes me do that. That makes me do a different noise. But he is the type of guy that makes me laugh and be shocked at the same time. It's really fun. I'm gonna give it a 4.5 just because it's not like The Exorcist, it's not Rosemary's Baby, it's not quite on that level for me. It's not one of those tops of all time, but it is probably in my top 10 of the movies or horror movies in the past 20 years now. Since the 2000s, it's up there. And it really, really, honestly, after revisiting these two movies, like my appreciation for Eli Roth as a filmmaker has bumped up a shitload But a little bit like what Link, you and I were talking about ahead of time, he has done a disservice to himself by pumping the brakes. He made this movie, then he made the second one, and he's on a roll. And he's like, "I'll just stop for 6 years. I'll still be good at this." He didn't he didn't direct another movie for 5 years after Hostel 2, and then he hasn't really made another horror movie till Thanksgiving.
He's
Green-
incredibly busy, right? So like he does the podcast, he did his AMC show, right? Or the whatever, he does all these other shows. He produces television shows.
Right.
He's like involved in a lot of like,
But it's
he's
weird.
kind of on the cutting edge right now, where he just directed like the first VR horror movie or something
Mhm.
like that. And
Yeah.
like I have no way to see that right now or whatever, right?
I'd
The
like-
interactive experience or something, but he's on the forefront. And one of the things he says in the myriad of commentaries here is like, yeah, I don't want to just be a horror movie. I want to feel like if I want to make a kids movie, I'll do that. He said that in like 2004 or whatever, when he's making this fucking commentary, and he did it with a house and the house with the clock in its walls or whatever. And that's a
Oh,
solid.
damn, that's a good movie. That's him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I
He
love
did
that
Knock
movie.
Knock, which is like an erotic thriller that he did with Keanu Reeves. Like that's pretty. He did the Death Wish remake with
Right.
Bruce Willis, which
Willis.
is the only Eli Roth film I haven't seen yet. And this motherfucker just took over a giant property, and he's doing Borderlands.
Yeah.
And that's, I like that he wants to push himself. But yeah, dude, let's like, we need more Hostels and
Yeah,
Cabin
I mean,
Fevers and shit, dude.
I'm saying
Yeah.
more power to him. I'm just saying if you one day we're gonna look at his career as a whole, and I wonder what he could have been if he didn't take time off. And he's still young as shit, and he's still a big enthusiast in the horror world.
Well,
I'm sure
he's doing what those people that he respected and modeled so much wanted to do.
going.
He's doing what John Carpenter did, actually, but to less success. He's doing what Wes Craven always wanted to do. He's doing what George A. Romero wanted to do. He's not allowing himself to be pigeonholed as the
Right.
guy who did Hostel, which I do really enjoy, man. And he is a very personable guy. And so obviously he's made good connections in
Mhm.
Hollywood. He can do whatever the fuck he wants. You know what I'm saying? So I love it.
Hell yeah, I love it as well. He's not just the guy that made Hostel, because he also made Hostel 2 just 2 years later. So with the first Hostel, boom, right there. God damn it, I got to get these things. They need to come out with 4K, and I'll rebuy both of them. But the first one had like a $4-ish million budget, made over $80 million. So it was a massive success. The second one, they over doubled the budget, had like a $10 million budget, and it made like 30 some million dollars, still tripled his budget, which is it's a really good success for Hollywood. That's like the golden standard. You triple your budget, you're a good director. But it was, at the time, it was said by some people that I read about on the internet, it was the most pirated movie in the history of cinema up till that point. So Eli Roth said like this was like a big like kick in the dick. Maybe this is why he quit making movies for a while. Maybe that fucking hurt his ego and it really messed him up, because supposedly it cost him millions and millions of dollars. But again, the critics are pretty lukewarm on this. I'm bringing it up only because it's interesting. Rotten Tomato scores even lower. IMDb like 5.5. And I watched this thing after I've heard my buddy Rockin Robbie Billups from Pop Culture Philosophers sing its praises for years and said this is the better one of these two. And I watched it, and the first thing I remembered is like, oh, I remember this movie fondly, and I really enjoyed it at the time. I definitely remember liking this one a lot. But it's so well written. It's such a clever way. It's like the best thing that they could possibly do for a sequel, to go
really
from the
is.
killer's perspective, the casting on both the killer side and the victim side is really, really good. They're all, I think, better and more likable characters, likable, for what they're doing. The gore, again, they totally fucking held back. It's not the super crazy gory movie that you remember it as, but when she rips people's penises off and balls, it's just as gory as you want it to be. So
Right.
it's got all that, but it's also the same things I was saying for the last one. It's still a really, really smart, well-made movie that came out just 2 years later. So, Mr. Rockin Robbie, actually, you know what? I'm going to send it to you, Stu, because you're looking bored down there.
No,
I don't want you to
what?
fall asleep.
Don't do that to me.
Shit, man.
Ah,
You just
come
gotta
on.
take a shit.
That was a great.
Kick us off, brother. What's
That was
your
a great.
history with
That was
it?
a great take, man. I think you said it very well. I thought, like, watching this today, I was, I thought the same thing. I thought they went and explored so many corners of this universe that they hadn't before, and I thought it was so clever and well done how they did it. I love how it picks up with the Jay Hernandez. We get a quick little conclusion to that story. I love how that starts off. So like,
doesn't that feel very like? Sorry to interrupt you. Doesn't it
go
feel
ahead.
like very Friday the 13th or
It
old
does.
80s slasher?
Yes.
Let's revisit it with a dream scenario, but then we really do kill him.
Dude, it's Friday 13th Part 2. It's the
Yeah.
opening to Friday 13th Part 2.
It's beautiful,
Yeah.
and like how you hear the cat lapping before we even see it. Like I just love the way that this scene was set up. But yeah, and then like getting the homeboy getting the head delivered to him, like that was just a great introduction to him, and like the situation. But yeah, like that was another one I saw in theaters, and it was awesome. Like so many things came back to me. Like certain things came back to me, and certain things didn't. So it was great, kind of like rediscovering parts of this movie. But again, I love the way like the female characters in this, and I love the way the tables get turned once again. Yeah, man, I just thought it was brilliant through and through. I love, like, one of my favorite scenes was the bidding scene when everybody's trying to get those bids in and all the girls are going up. I just love those little bits. I love the whole comprehensive look at the bigger picture and all the elements of this working machine. They had obviously stepped up security. You know what I mean? Security was no joke. So like I love how the continuity. It felt like like they didn't miss a beat. So it was so well done.
Hell fucking yeah, man. Missing link, my brother. Hostel 2. I've already heard you like it better than Hostel 1. Tell me about it, dude.
I think we were talking about a little earlier before the show. It's like the characters are just overall better. Like whether it's like not two sides of the same coin, but it's like you get to see this guy struggle with this, but he ends up being a piece of shit. And then our heroine, our final girl, she turns out she was a fucking wolf in sheep's clothing this entire time, like she was nothing to be fucked with. And just the evolution of those two arcs is like way more interesting than anything going on in the first movie, even though I love the first movie. But that's a big reason why I love the second one. They just did a lot more with the characters. I was really, I'm glad you brought that up. I was very shocked. Like I was like, so I watched the first one. I was like, all right, the first one, they couldn't really take too many, in terms of it being not as gruesome as I remember. I was like, it's the first one, maybe this was edgy for 2005, but I know the second one is going to be gory as shit. Watched it wasn't, but it was still good, but it was just crazy how, I mean, at the time, this shit was super gory, but it's crazy how standards have changed since then. I like Stu was saying, the whole networking and them building the world out into exactly how many people are in on this, like the town question Ninja asked earlier, you kind of get to see how, like, some people, I'm sure they know something, like the guy that got his ass beat when he's like driving his truck and she's running from the guys and she's like, I tried to help you, and you see he got his ass beat. Like some people are probably aware that some fuck shit goes on, but they're like, I'm gonna keep my head down, stay out of it. That is what it is. But they revealed just a lot more as to how it's all operated, because there's, like I said, any questions you had about the first one are certainly answered in this second one. And just better performances, my man. The dude that turns out to be a piece of shit, like, that fucked me up when I first saw that. I was like, you son of a bitch, like, you were so nice, and I was holding out hope that you're gonna help her, and here you are. And even his friend, it was all about the dichotomy, or like the in this movie, it's like people weren't what they seemed, on the surface level. Friend was talking a lot of shit, really pumped up for it. As soon as he saw like a little blood, my man's was fucking out,
I love
so
it's so smart, like the way exactly what you're saying, the way they go like the perfect direction with all the characters. Like they start in a really interesting direction to explore the different sides of it, and then the way that they take the arcs of all the characters that matter at the end, it's like it couldn't have been any better than that. It's just so smartly done.
Yeah,
I gotta look at smart word. God damn it!
Hey, we understood the word.
It felt good.
Yeah, sounded good. Sounded good to me.
Well, one thing that you guys both said, which is just a word that I had wrote down that I don't normally get to write in my notes when I'm talking about horror movies, is world building. It's not a big part of the horror world, and it's something that I love in storytelling. So it's one of the best aspects of this. And the second one obviously does great with that. But Mr. Robbie, Mr. Rockin Robbie, better. Your thoughts, my brother, and your history.
Well, okay. First of all, world building, what you just said, right? Not a lot of horror sequels actually do that, right? And they would be better to do it, right? They really would. But sometimes they get bitten. They shoot themselves in the foot with it. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 kind of builds out the world a little bit more, right? But it didn't really do very well, right?
Well, what's interesting, if I can just jump in real quick, it's interesting because what I'm like the way that this kind of took the place of the slasher, it's hard to world build when your whole franchise is focused on a single individual.
Yeah.
That's like it'll just like Saw, the way that they were able to build out the world in that.
And TCM was like a family, right? So in the second one, they get more into this dude's like actual business and that he's like winning awards. There's other siblings and there's a whole methodology to it and shit like that, you know? So I do find this movie very similar to TCM and as far as like where it takes the story, right? It takes it into a more extravagant way. Eli Roth's intention was, okay, if I'm going to do another one, initially his first idea was, I want it to start at the end of the first movie, a direct continuation, right? He goes, I want it to be Hostel 2, right? And so then he was doing it and he started with the Jay Hernandez character again. And he just didn't get a good vibe on it. Then he came up with this other idea because he was actually influenced by the Bush administration, like most artists were in this era. This movie came out in 2007. I was 6. I was an adamant anti-Bush head when I still gave a fuck about politics and thought it made a difference. And this is a critique on the Bush administration, which is a kind of a political theme that's in the movie, but it's not on the nose. It's not over the top, but like rich, entitled dudes. Okay, we were talking about the entitled nature of the American travelers in the first one. What about the entitled nature of the Americans with true wealth, right? And also the idea that's in both of these movies is that there are levels of addiction where, and this happens to anything you're super into, it's not good enough. You got to keep going further.
Right.
You know, sex with your wife isn't good enough. Sex with your partner's not good enough. You got to pay for it, right? So you can do the things that you're afraid to do to your partner, or you got to like do it keeps escalating. Drugs, right? You know, you start smoking some pot. Some people, I'm not saying weed's a gateway drug, but I'll tell you what, after I did weed, I started doing a little bit more drugs. And, you know, it may have taken a while, but you know,
but I tell you what, you drank a beer before you smoked that weed. Nobody blames the goddamn fucking beer, but the beer is the first gateway drug. But
I was into weed before I was into beer.
But it's rare.
Yeah.
Most people drink that beer first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And weed is a different thing, man. You know, like I've done recreational usage of drugs and different degrees and of legality. I won't mention it, I guess, but hey, I've never shot heroin or anything. I've never injected anything to me. I can't do that, bro. I can't even, like, when they have to take blood from me or whatever, I'm just like, ignore it. You know what I'm saying? I'm that fucking dude. I'm such a hemophobe. Like, for the movies that I like, it's weird, dude. I do not like seeing my own blood. I'm like fucking Ben Stiller in Dodgeball. You know, no one but so it's about like these rich entitled fucks who are like in there and they're like pushing these boundaries and like more is more, right, Stuart Gordon? But sometimes more just leads you down this thing where you're just chasing the next high. You got to rise up to killing somebody. And part of the thing is when Stuart, you know, like his whole thing is taking aggression out on his wife because he feels emasculated by her, right? And all this kind of shit. He's talking about Dick Cheney. He's talking about George W. Bush. He's talking about Donald Rumsfeld. 100% is there. If you don't believe me, listen to Eli talk about it, right? So that's there. But then when he got the idea of that theme, he widened the scope. And he goes, no, I want to see it from the killer's perspective, right? I want to see that. But then at the same time, crafting new characters and flipping the script. He got some criticism. He listened to some of his criticism. He did tone down the violence a little bit, right? He did tone down the nudity. But what did he do? He threw a couple penises in there. Well, one of them was being ripped off. That wasn't very sexy. But the first penis we saw was pretty sexy, right?
I love when the guy says, Sasha, no. Don't eat that. No.
So there's that, right? And so he's trying to balance it out there. He puts it from the women's perspective in this one. It's women travelers that are going across Europe. They mirror, kind of like the best friend is kind of like Paxton was in the movie, but Heather couldn't be any like further away from Oli. You know what I'm saying? And the way they do that twist at the end, that's very Wes Craven, where the hero becomes the villain because she's got money too. And it's also about like, just like in the first movie, it's about no matter how entitled you are, don't think that you know the other person. Don't think that you know the location you're in, right? And some dudes that think they're like ready to go, like the fucking friend of Stuart. What's his fucking name? It's Todd, right? I remember that dude from 24, dude. So it cracked me up seeing him in this fucking movie, right? But he's golfing when you first see him, right?
He's also in the Friday the 13th remake. He's the cop that gets the.
Oh yeah, he is.
He's very chiseled, handsome man.
So you see the Bushisms in there and all that shit, right? And he figures out he wants to do it from the killer's perspective. He's trying to put more of a highlight on the agency of the viewpoint from the women in the story by switching some of the characters around. But at the same time, even though some of the violence seems toned down, some of the sex seems toned down, brother, that bathtub scene for me is the fucking highlight of the franchise. The bathtub scene
so good
is the most gnarly, transgressive, and subversive, and out there and fucking sexy and wrong scene in the entire franchise, man. Like that scene alone makes up for the fact that they didn't go further in other scenes in the film, right? I fucking love that scene so much. And the fact that it's the character you don't think is going to drop her top.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Dude, it being that actress, which to me is like, I know she's in a bunch of stuff, but she's like, imagine it being Willow from Buffy. It's like doing that with Willow. Like she could have played that role. She's so the last actress in the world that you could imagine doing that to it. You wouldn't normally do it to that character in the movie.
Yeah.
But upside down.
Willow went to band camp.
Yeah.
Throw that out there.
Yeah, it's true. Hey,
isn't that Randy's sister from the Scream franchise?
Yeah, oh, it is. You're right. Yeah. They just give me very similar energy, those two. But I agree. I think that's the highlight for me of the movie. And it's just such a unique, cool scene. It's so like, I don't know. It's hard to watch. It's really hard to watch. And the fact that it's a woman doing it to her,
yeah,
I think that helps make it palpable to a degree. But being upside down, like there's something about that is just so like the fact that it's not sexy. Like sorry to say, like, it really is like an unattractive look, and I feel bad for her, the actress. I guess they did that in 5-minute intervals for 2 days straight.
Yeah,
they hung her upside down for 5 minutes at a time. But she said she doesn't want to. She said it was a fine experience and she loves her job, but she doesn't want to do horror anymore.
Dude, Eli says that like she was like almost like honored that he wanted her to do the scene where she would be nude, hung upside down, and killed. And he's like, "You want me to be nude?" He's like, "Yeah, why not?" Right? And I love it because Eli's like, the only really sexy bits is when they're drawing people in the beginning of the film, right? Like when dude's there and then when the chick shows up, right? She's gorgeous. They're both gorgeous, like Italian. There's the Italian fucking thing here. We'll get to that in just a sec. I'm running. I'm fucking rambling. I'm sorry.
No, you're good, dude.
But Eli says like,
beer to drink, dude.
Yeah, he was like, oh fuck, I lost it. He wanted to do this, that. First of all, there's the Italian. We'll just go back to that until I remember what I'm talking about. There's the Italian vibe to it, right? That scene in the tub, that like I feel like Argento or Fulci or Lamberto would have done that. You know what I'm saying? Like that's totally in their wheelhouse. There's more Italians in this movie. There's Verno, you're well versed in Italian horror now. Do you see the influence here?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, 100%.
In the camera work too, in both of the movies, you see the Argento influence in the Fulci.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how comedic it is. It's playing with things. I love how it's subverting expectations, just like the first one did. We don't expect our main character to turn the way she does at the end. We don't expect the dude from 24 and the Friday the 13th remake to like basically chicken out when he accidentally cuts the
Yeah.
the woman too
Really
far.
did not
Yeah.
expect.
Like, right? And we're not expecting Stewart to go fucking ham. And the fact that, like, when he shows up and he's like, I'm going to get you out of here, we are there for it. We think that this is the story.
Right.
And then we realize, no, that's part of his sadistic fucking game. So much that when Todd asks Stewart, do you know what you're going to do? Have you thought about it? And he's like, I don't know. Bro, that motherfucker has thought about this. You know what I'm saying? He's thought about it every fucking night of his life since his marriage turned to shit, in his opinion. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what he's going after, right? So I love that. And I love that. I was saying the sexiness is only in that first bit. Oh, here's the thing. This is what I was going to say. Eli Roth in the commentary, one of the fucking like 4 commentaries on here, and he has a commentary on each disc with Quentin, which y'all need to definitely check out.
God, I'm so annoyed. Just quit saying it. I'm getting annoyed that I bought the
I'm
wrong
sorry. I like to weird stretch, y'all. These are the ones, and I think this one right here is actually difficult to get nowadays. I don't know, but he mentions that, all right, people were criticizing me for all the sex in the first one, but I realized that all I had to do was have beautiful naked bodies, and as long as someone's drawing them, it's art, and it's not like sex and exploitation. So that's actually a point he's trying to make there. And I love it. And I think the ending is super fucking strong. I was blown away by the ending. Like when she's like just pays to fucking kill Stewart, and Stewart's like, he's like, not with your second mortgage and all that fucking shit.
Yeah.
Just rips his, and dude, you want to talk about, oh, this movie's not as gory as the last one? They rip a fucking dick off, and it's like the most like visceral, like
she's like, just the way it's like flopping around. I'm looking at it, I'm like, is that what? Yeah,
Let him-
yeah, probably would.
Oh, dude, and that dude who
Yelling.
played Stewart, who I believe is in, I think he was in Desperate Housewives, right? But Roger Bart is that dude. He's perfect in that scene, dude.
Totally.
You feel it. You feel it 100%.
He's perfect. And, oh, you know what? That reminds me to give a shout. We mentioned the Achilles heel cut in the previous movie. The guy's performance during that, like that's one of the better like male screams that you get in horror. I was thinking, you reminded me. That's probably my favorite moment too, Robbie. The upside down bit. So let's go ahead and just do a nice, simple. If you guys can think of your favorite moments from the movie, then we'll grade this thing and we'll get up out this bitch. But I'll see what I can come up with at the end. But if I were to pick one, that would have been my favorite. That's the highlight for me. And everything leading up to her being kidnapped is great too. Like, I believe that guy. I'm like, no, she'll be fine. Look at him, this husky guy. Yeah, he's a smooth dancer. And then it's like, no, the immediate flip where it goes to where you think he's still like on her side, then the bag goes over her head. The next time you see him, he's lighting up his cigarette, and he's now the villain. And it's like that. Like, that's really well.
No ponytail anymore, right?
Yeah, it's really well executed.
He was like a security guard or a stuntman or an extra on the first movie, and so Eli actually wrote that part for him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool. That's
Oh,
cool.
that's dope.
He's always stood out to me. It just, you don't get to see a lot of big men like that in film. That I don't know, in that role, it was cool. But Stu, my brother, do you have a favorite moment, or really, brother, if you had anything else you want to take it, anything else you want to say on the whole movie at all?
I don't know about favorite moment, but the scene with the group of kids, the group of kids was, I guess, the bubblegum kids as they're credited in the after movie credits. But yeah,
Terrifying.
dude, like that scene with the man where he makes him choose one, like that was crazy. And I love like him going kid to kid with the gun in their face, and like that was just so beautiful how authentic and real it felt. I love that scene. It was just one of
those two sentences together. That scene with the kid and the gun,
right? But it was spellbinding, man. I was watching that. That one definitely got my attention. I was like, and it was just over. You're just like, man, what the fuck was that? It's crazy and kind of out of left field, but at the same time, it really works. And just like how it really brings home like the lawlessness and what these kids are like in the end too, when homegirl gets her head cut off and they're playing soccer with it, joyfully playing soccer with it. But yeah, the kids are the star of the show for sure for me.
What's that?
Before she cut her head off, like she said, "Batkia."
I don't know.
Yeah, she did.
I don't know. And one of the things, Eli didn't put subtitles on the foreign language because he wanted you to feel
right,
like just like they did. Like, oh, I don't know what.
Confused.
And they're like, God, to go back to the whole pretentious natures of Americans, like in general, and especially overseas, is when they're showing the movie on the screen and they're like, how are we supposed to understand if it's not in English? Bro, you're in Slovakia.
Right. Yeah, I know. I thought that too.
Like, get the fuck out of here.
It's embarrassing. Like, oh God, would you shut the fuck up?
And the kids are great too, because that's another bit that Eli Roth found out that's a real fucking thing. Like gangs of kids in Eastern Europe that don't give a fuck. They will literally kill you for bubblegum. Like,
it's terrifying. I love that they got the same, at least one of the same kids. Like the lead kid is the same in both movies because he's got a good.
He throws
look
this
too.
dude under the bus so bad in part 2, man.
I love that he rips his hat off. I assume because he's like, I'm gonna take his hat in case this guy's gonna fuck it up, and he throws him out there after he rips his hat off. It's like, oh, cold.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I love them in both the first and the second one. That was a great recurring character, them as a whole. But I don't know. Besides those two, there's so many. Of course, like the upside down scene was crazy. Yeah, the gore was a little bit dialed back. I would say, but it's still. We still had
until they ripped the dick off.
Yeah, right.
But did you find yourself being like, oh God?
No, not at all. Because like. It was so cool getting to learn, like getting to know these characters, seeing like how the whole town was like had become a whole town operation now. And, yeah. And just like, I love, like Robbie said, seeing it from the killer's point of view and all that. It was great. There was so many great, spots they hit on. So I was never left like wanting for anything really in this one. I think it was always fresh and moved at a great pace.
And what about old dude from Goblet of Fire, right? Like,
yeah.
I love that you think he's part of it, right? The dude that's hooking up with the best friend, right? And you think he's part of it, then you see him. He's the one that dude is eating. That's a gnarly bit too. If you really look at that scene, right? Like
his leg.
His leg, and like he's just cutting pieces off him and eat. Dude, that's terrifying.
I love that you just said that's the guy from Goblet of Fire, because that was one of those things that was in the back of my head. Like, oh, fucking guy looks like the guy from Harry Potter.
What is it?
But
like
as soon as you said, I'm like, oh, it is.
Yeah.
Is that his name? Victor or something like that?
Victor.
It's like the same year. He looks exactly the same too.
I'm all like, dude, in this movie, Hermione's got a thing for him too.
Oh, you made me think of something, Stu. Oh, I was gonna say something. It was brilliant. It's gonna make me look cool and smart. Oh, but it's gone.
Stop thinking about it. You'll think about it.
I know. There you go. Steph, favorite moments or just anything you wanna add?
Favorite moment. So there were some great moments. I do think like the cinematography was better in this one. They're like when they were at the festival, or when she's like in the pool, and then like when she wakes up and like no one like confused, like that whole scene. I think there's like many more shots that were visually appealing in this one. Favorite moment, I will say, I love the whole, she's been a fucking wolf in sheep's clothing the entire time, where she bossed up on him. It was like, I'm buying my way out of this bitch, and even she didn't want to go get that dark, even up to the last moment. She's like up there trying to think of how to get out of this, but he's still jabbing at the fucking mouth, and so it was really him that made her make that final decision. She might have paid for both of them to get out of there, she had bread. They might have not let that play out, but she didn't want to unleash the beast, but when she did, she's like, I tried, bro. Let him bleed out. Feed it to the dogs. That was I like that turn. Very boss.
Dogs ate the shit out of it. That dude's like, no,
I can't.
You're gonna shit tonight, man. It's gonna be rough.
Yeah, God. I think we already mentioned it, but I feel like it was in the previews. The guy that we've been mentioning this whole time from Friday the 13th and the other things, the really handsome guy, the bit where he's in there like taunting her and he's so gleeful about it. And that's one thing about this movie, or the second one over the first one. It's way funnier. Like they really lean into the comedy of it and they nail the comedy. And he is a huge reason why. Like he's a hysterical character. That's
what it was. The dude and Jay Hernandez, the dude in the first one that Jay Hernandez is talking to, like the other guy, he's like, oh, dude, like, what should I do it quick? Should I do it fucking slow?
Yeah.
Dude, I'm watching with my girlfriend. She got addicted to that fucking show Suits on Netflix or whatever the fuck. And I'm watching it one day with her and I'm like, this dude is so fucking familiar to me. Who is it? It's the dude from fucking Hostel, right? But I don't remember who, but when Eli's trying to figure out where he's going to go with Hostel 2, somebody says, I want to know that guy's story.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
You just made me think of something that I'm really glad. I had it written down on my notes with like 7 stars next to it. The main character in the second one, the boss bitch at the end that turns out to be rich and she can buy Slovakia. She's the girl at the beginning of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003 that kills herself in the car. That's her. I'm looking at stuff this whole time, waiting for your reaction. I know. I'm like, no way. Is that really her? I looked it up, and that's actually why he hired her. He saw that performance, and I don't know how he saw this in that performance. He's like, I need someone that can be very vulnerable and someone that can go through the shit, but can also be super strong at when needed to be. But interesting, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. 100%.
That's what I wrote. That
She's unrecognizable almost in that role, right?
Yeah.
Laura German is her name, or
Laura German. She plays Beth, and
they actually desexify her a little bit in this movie, I think, too.
Oh,
Obviously, they did that in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2006 as well.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, they definitely don't make her like and purposefully done. None of the girls are overly sexed up, but
the friend is, man. Come on, brother. Let's be honest.
Well, she is.
What's her name?
She's
Bajou
just
Phillips.
hot. She's just sexy.
Well, that's Nora Reese's wife or something.
Oh, what's his name? Masterson, the guy from that 70s show that's in jail. That's his wife. Yeah, the really hot one.
Oh, that's his wife.
That's his
that means she's available. Yo, come and get on the show. Teach me how to say your name right.
She is gorgeous. She's the best looking one, but for as hot as she is, they don't like.
I don't know. You seem pretty hot for Richard Burgi, man.
Which one?
You were like the handsome one.
Oh, he's so good looking. Oh, he's ridiculously chiseled.
He looks good when he's swinging that golf club, man. I'm not even lying.
He looked good with Jason Voorhees poking that thing through his eyeball. I ain't lying. That's like my favorite kill from that movie. But all right, man. Fantastic. So let's go ahead. We'll go around. We're gonna rate this thing. We're gonna get up out this bitch, and let's do the thing. Let's start with Mr. Rockin Robbie Billups, 1 through 5. You guys down in the chat, if you've seen Hostel 2, what is your rating? What you got, Robbie?
If Hostel 1 is a 4.69, Hostel 2 is a 5. This is a 5. You digs? I think it's the world building, taking your concept. How do you follow up Hostel? It's better than Saw 2. I'll tell you that. It's better than the follow-up to Saw. And I like Saw 2. I really do. But Hostel 2 takes this to another level. There is a Hostel 3. I never wanted to watch it because Eli wasn't a part of it, right? But it was directed by Ty West. But from what I heard, it was taken away from Ty West and re-edited without his approval. So Ty West is not a fan of Hostel 3.
He wants to take his name off of it, yeah.
Yeah, so that troubles me a little bit, but I wish Eli's got to do another one of these.
I was actually thinking about that yesterday. I was going to pose that to you guys. I feel like he did it in these, but if he had the idea for it, that's what it would come down to for me. If he had a good enough idea.
Yeah, I think Eli needs to get gnarly again. You know, I'm not saying that I don't like his other works. I do like basically his children's movie that he made with Jack Black, House with a Clock in Its Walls, which is really good. I haven't seen Death Wish. I'm really pumped for Borderlands, even though it seems like a Guardians of the Galaxy clone. He's not the conceptuer. He's not the conceptuer of that one. You know what I'm saying? Like what's his name? Tim, the guy who did I don't remember his name. The guy who did the first Deadpool. Tim Miller or something like that?
Tim Miller.
I think it was supposed to be a Tim Miller production. Then he left the project or something. Eli came in. He's pulling a Ron Howard on Han Solo for this one. Basically, he's coming in and finishing up somebody's movie that he wasn't there in the initial stages, but the movie looks fun, right?
That's Borderlands you're talking about?
Borderlands, yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that he had joined.
Maybe it's not Tim Miller. Maybe it's somebody else that starts with the T. Don't quote me on that, but he's taking the project over from somebody else, right?
I didn't know that.
That's why it's so close to Thanksgiving, if you really think about it, right?
Right.
I do like Thanksgiving, but I need a return to gnarlyism, right? So I would love a Hostel 3, or a true Hostel 3, I guess you could say. So I would like that, but I did. Don't forget, another Italian influence movie he did is Green Inferno, which is
which I need to see.
yeah, Cannibal Holocaust. So,
Oh yeah,
I'm thinking about a Cannibal Holocaust Green Inferno double feature one day. So.
oh, dude, I'd be there.
Is that one supposed to be good? Green Inferno? I've always
It
wanted to
is
see that
good,
one.
man. It's great,
Okay.
and it's got a way better eyeball scene than the first fucking Hostel. Like 100%. It's got a great eyeball scene, dude.
Yeah,
he's got a thing for ears.
Yeah,
after seeing Thanksgiving and the ear bit, and
Yeah.
then remember that there's an ear bit in this where.
Well, I think it's because
somebody
he's a
shoves
fan of
something in
these
their ear.
all these films, and he's probably the reason I'm an Italian horror film fan as well, right? He was the one, like, I was already into Argento, but he was the one that got me like noticing, like, no, this is a genre that you need to get into. The Italian side of it and the Giallo side of it. This is Hostel 2 is very much influenced by some what's his fucking name? I'm not as familiar with him. I need to get more. Sergio
Leone. Oh no, that's the Western guy.
Martini or something like that.
Sergio Martini sounds right. He's the other big one. I think you're right.
Yeah, like this is apparently based on some of his movies and shit like that. Obviously,
one of his Torso. No, that's
Torso. Torso is one of them. Yeah, Torso is one of the movies that he's really. And I haven't seen Torso, so
it's good.
Yeah,
Torso is by Sergio Martino. Good job, Verno. Yeah, Sergio Martino.
Yeah, so I love it. I love how, even though it doesn't have as much, say, like nudity and sex and gory bits like all throughout, it is, to me, a gnarlier film, a funnier film, and like Lynk said, the cinematography really steps up a bit here for me. But it's doing something different with it. But like I said, it's Giallo influence, and you can tell 100% if you're familiar with the works of like Bava and Fulci's early works and Argento's 70s work, like you see the vibe that he's going for here, and he captures it 100%.
I was telling you, like, I'm gonna try to not be annoying and bring up Hitchcock is fucking so much, but like I've been on this major Hitchcock kick. Like, I watch a lot of his movies. I highly recommend anybody. They just added a bunch of them that aren't usually ever streaming. Rope, Rear Window, and Vertigo, like 3 of his biggest films that are never streaming around
Rope,
Prime right now.
I still gotta watch that.
Well, dude, you gotta. I watched all those and a handful of other ones, and now I put on Hostel 1 and 2, and the whole time I'm going,
Where are they streaming, Vernon?
On Amazon Prime.
Okay,
I highly recommend everybody go watch Rope. It's from 1948. It's all set in one location. It's kind of set up to look like it's all done in one shot, so it's a little bit gimmicky. It's old as shit, but it's a little dated. But I'm telling you, it's just like a masterclass in sustained suspense. Like, from the first 2 seconds of the movie, you know what the movie is, and then it just holds that till the movie.
So it's like really edging for horror fans.
Totally, yeah.
And I haven't checked, but like Shudder has a lot of Italian stuff on it, so it may have some of those Sergio Martini films.
It does, yeah, definitely.
I have to check them out then.
Hell's yeah, man. So that's a 5 from Mr. Rockin Robbie Bills for Hostel 2. You need a minute?
That should be an advertisement for the Rope now, like edging for horror fans.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you get some eyes on it.
Thriller fans. Yeah, exactly. All right. Steph, what's your grade for Hostel 2, brother? Final thoughts.
I was gonna I said it earlier, everything that any qualms my people might have had with the first one, it's all ironed out with the second one. Mad that it took me so long to realize that. But no, with that being said, I was gonna try to be, a little edgy and not give it its deserved accolades. But this is a 5. I really enjoyed my rewatch of this, way more than I expected. I was kind of going into it to try to, because like I said, Robbie's been touting this for a minute, so I was like, let me try to find some flaws in this one, But sadly, there were none. No, I really, like I said, like the whole character dynamic with the
film.
I like the whole character turn, and like you were saying earlier, Bruno, like way more interesting characters compared to the first one, and just way more sophisticated than the first one. But the first one's still great. Don't let me down talk it. But yeah, I'll give this one a 5.
Hell yeah, man!
It is one of the it's very underrated. I'll say that. Not enough people talk about this, or like.
I know people don't give a shit. Some people don't give a shit about Rotten Tomato scores and IMDb, but usually I get it. If I at least get why they have the grades that they have or the ratings that they have, I do not get it. I think there's this prejudice against Eli Roth in these films and this torture porn and this broiness that people like and like I think a lot of people, I'm going to use the word, a lot of people that are a little overly woke, they do not like Eli Roth, and I think a lot of critics are a little overly woke and they're not going to like his broiness, and that affects it. But yeah, I agree with you. It's underrated, 100%. Stu, my brother from another.
5, definitely a 5 for me, man. I like we said, I think it's like just one of the best sequels ever, horror movies or whatever. I think it's just such a fantastic follow up. It like I said before, it covers all those aspects, bigger story or bigger picture aspects that we didn't get in the first film, and so many great characters, so many great moments, a great ending, great twist. Yeah, man, I just thought it was seamless moving from one to the next. I just so much fun rewatching both of these. So definitely put the first one at a 5. This one's definitely a 5. Yeah, this was fantastic.
Hell yeah, man. All right, 3 5s. Robbie with a 5, Lynk with a 5, Stu with a 5, and Mr. 3-Gun Pedro with a 5. So
Did you say 3-Gun Pedro?
Yeah. Hey, he earned it. He earned it, man. He's been putting in the work. I'm gonna go with a 5 too, man. I think everything I said about the first one, maybe the second one doesn't, like there's things that it doesn't do as well that there's no way it could do as well. The how much I respect the way it builds up the mystery in the first one, like obviously you can't do that in the second one. That's as far as like the writing goes, but they make up for it with the way that they wrote the characters in this one, or the way that Eli wrote the characters. I already said it. It's just very, very interesting, intricate, and well done, and perfectly casted from top to bottom. All the girls are perfect. The 2 guys are fucking spot on perfect. They're hilarious. The humor, as I said, much better in this one. The penis being ripped off, one of the more memorable moments in the history of cinema. You know what I mean? What's the other movie where they rip a dude's dick and balls and throw it to a dog? You know what I mean? I don't know the other one. I'm gonna give it a 5, man. Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I was just. What was the movie where it's like the dude was wearing the mask, and it would turn out we thought the chick was we thought it was a chick, but it was really a dude, and at the end he's like standing there butt ass naked with his dick hanging out.
Terror Train?
No,
no. We're
no. He was like,
I don't know.
They went to camp, and
Sleepaway Camp.
Sleepaway Camp.
It's Sleepaway Camp. Yes, that had some gnarly dick in it, but they didn't rip it off. That's the only thing I was gonna say.
True.
Oh, have y'all ever seen the movie Teeth?
I have not, but
that I have. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's about vagina dentata. Like,
Yeah,
figure that
that's
shit
wild.
out. And
Vagina Dentata, she used to work at the club. She was actually one of my favorite girls. Vagina Dentata, she had tricks, blow your mind. Allison Troy.
Dude, Teeth is awesome. Y'all, somebody should fucking do that.
2009, right? All right, I'm on it, dude. I'll slap it on a list, man.
Put it on Horror Fest,
I'm
man. I'll
down.
be there. Let's do it.
All right, you heard it here first. Horror Fest, DHS, Teeth, baby. He's doing it. Be there, be square. All right, so hell yeah, man. This is fucking awesome. 5s all the way around. So obviously we all loved both these movies. So I'm super happy that I kind of just randomly we got the good crew together and everyone fucking loved it, man. This one needs to be revisited by the critics and a lot of people out there. A lot of haters that hate on Eli Roth in general, and I've been one of them, dude. Robbie, I'm not gonna lie. There's been a lot of times I'm like, Robbie really loves this Eli Roth guy. I'm like, I think he loves him like maybe a little too much.
Yeah,
but after revisiting these 2, I'm like, no, I get it. I do get it. I get the love.
Yeah. When's the last time you saw Green Inferno?
Never. I've never seen it. So
bruh. You and Stu are in for it, man.
I haven't seen Knock Knock. I haven't seen House with the Clock in the Wall. So all of his stuff that he did in between his big horror thing, even in between this and Thanksgiving, basically, I haven't seen.
Yeah.
So it's a hole I need to fill up.
Okay.
But all right, hell yeah. I appreciate all you guys down in the chat. 2-Gun, Allison Troy, Inja the Benja up in this bad boy. E9 panel grid. Make sure you guys are checking him out. Stu Dr. Doom's fan club, you sexy son of a. Make sure you're checking him out and all you fine people. Nick came in here, pretend like he was in here, but that was actually while he was on Robbie's show still.
It was why Joe Crowley was talking about Amazing Spider-Man, I'm sure.
As I'm sitting here being like, are they just going to fucking rap? What the fuck is happening?
I'm sorry. Joe wanted us to fix the comic book industry tonight, man.
Yeah.
All right. So before we send this thing on our way, real quick, I'm just going to run through our summer abroad lineup. I'll tell you guys the same thing that I told Missing Link before the show. I might change this shit at the drop of fucking just because I say we're gonna cover this shit, something might pop up, especially Godzilla -1. One of these might have to get swapped out if Godzilla -1 comes out streaming in America between then and now. But the almost official lineup goes as follows. We're kicking it off next week with Ring or Ringu, a Japanese film. Very excited about it. And here's another thing. I have not seen like the majority of the movies on this list, which is part of the reason why I wanted to do this. Just pick a bunch of movies I haven't seen so I can watch them. So Ring, and then the following week, Suspiria, which is one of the movies I have seen many, many times and absolutely adore. Robbie, have you seen this one?
It's my favorite movie of all time. Come on.
Hell yeah. Very, very excited about that.
By the way, that actress, the main character, she's in fucking Minority Report. I just realized that last night. She's the mother of the that's killed of the precog, Agatha.
I love her so much. Just like how gorgeous she is. She's like one of the, I don't know, she's one of the most beautiful.
Have you ever seen Shock Treatment? It's like pretty much the follow-up to Rocky Horror Picture Show. She's the main character. Really? She plays Janet. Yeah.
Really? That's Jessica Harper. Do I have her name right? That sound right?
Yeah, that's it.
Hell yeah, she's absolutely gorgeous. Right. Love her, love that movie. Speaking of evil, I have not heard this. It's from 2022. There's an American remake coming out at the end of the summer, and this is supposed to be fire from Denmark, I believe. This is a Hong Kong slasher that I'm doing with my buddy Wes called Dream Home. Supposed to be the shit. I'm very, very excited about this. Just Hong Kong slasher sounds badass. The Ritual, to get some English speaking movies in here. This one's from my boy Missing Link. This one we've been planning on covering forever. I really enjoyed this movie. It's on Netflix from 2017. Make sure you check it out. Stu, you don't know that we're doing this. I know you love this movie, but I don't know. Hopefully we're gonna get you there for it. Parasite.
I've never seen that one.
We added this one on there. Steph and I at his recommendation to get a South Korean horror film.
I love him.
Yeah, South Korea is Korean film, man.
Yeah, they've done so much good work recently. Happy to get this one on. What's the director's name, guys? The guy that did
Boon Jong Ho. Is that right, Robbie? He did The Host.
Yeah, The Host.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. We just watched I just watched The Host for the first time for March Madness, man.
Hell yeah, this is supposed to be really, really good. It's on HBO. This won Picture of the Year. It won an Oscar. Picture of the fucking year. So it's kind of a big deal.
And it's a horror movie, but they'll call it a fucking thriller.
Yeah,
so
that's what.
Fuck the Academy.
Pan's Labyrinth. This one's Fable's pick. My man is on hiatus, but hopefully, I have faith he'll be back by the time this rolls around to talk.
Great movie.
Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth.
Which this dude up there has never seen a Guillermo del Toro movie.
Never, besides Blade 2. I mean, I've never seen any of his horror movies. Yeah, besides Blade 2, which I didn't even know it was him. I haven't seen Kronos. I haven't seen the Devil one, the Devil's Backbone. Haven't seen this one. Yeah, so by the time that movie comes along, I'm going to remedy that situation. I plan to kind of burn through his catalog. And then we're finishing it off with Martyrs. This was, I hear, new French Extremity. And this is like the newest of the extremists of the French fucking new French Extremity films of that. This is like right around the time that Hostel 2 came out. This is part of France's kind of torture porn era, but it's supposed to be at least considered by critics more elevated than Hostel. So that'll be kind of interesting to judge that when we get to it based on our American torture porn. So
we're Americans.
Yeah, right. So that is Summer Abroad, and then next Monday night on Pop Culture Philosophers, Cruise Choice continues, baby. By the way, Tropic Thunder, one of the best streams, one of the funniest.
Dude, y'all killed that. That was such a great show. I meant to say that to all you guys. You guys did a great job on that one.
Robbie, tell people about Pop Culture Philosophers, my friend.
Oh, PCP, comic book reviews, movie reviews,
And a whole lot more.
yeah, and a whole lot more. We're in the midst of Crew's Choice, where the crew gets to pick their movies, but everybody has to pick a Tom Cruise movie this year. So it's a joke, it's a bit Crew's Choice, and we're all having a lot of fun with it so far. To be honest with you, we've been really surprised by like revisiting Tropic Thunder and checking out Risky Business. Some of us for the first time, or what seemingly might be the first time, since I haven't seen it since I was a kid. So we've had a lot of fun. Minority Report is 2 of the Crew's choices, Brian and Fable. Neither of them will be there Monday night to talk about this film, but we're going to have a grand old time talking about Minority Report. And Spilio is going to be on that show. So everybody get excited.
Yeah.
Steph, I think, is there, right? Is it you, Steph? Shit, I got the link. I got it right here. I'll tell you exactly who's on it. It's going to be Jelani, Brooks, Joe Corallo, Steph, and John Spilio Topolis.
Nice. Hell yeah. Very, very excited about that. I love that. I almost picked this one because I remember this being like a badass movie, really cool concept when it came out.
Absolutely.
So, hell yeah, man. And then last night, was that last night? It was.
Yes, sir. It was.
Had a fantastic time. I was over with Steph and Stu on Supreme Clientele. I was there for the first half hour talking a little X-Men 97. And then I don't know. I assume they just wrapped it up after that. Did you guys keep going or?
No, yeah, we talked a couple comic books.
I'm just joking.
No,
Tell the people about it, guys. What you show.
Yeah, man. Every Wednesday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern on Dr. Doom's Fan Club YouTube channel. Link and I talking comic books, new and old. Usually do about 3 to 4 new releases and an old arc or story run or book that we love from the past. We've been mainly focusing on Marvel in the 2000s. But yeah, I think we got Frankencastle coming up next on a look back, and of course we're breaking down new releases every week. Yeah,
are y'all running out of material? I can give you some, man.
No, dude, we've done a bunch of stuff. Frankencastle is a classic, man. You're not gonna rep for Frankencastle?
Classic? Okay.
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
All right.
A classic in the Frank Castle canon.
Okay. No, I mean I like it. It's bold, man. It's bold, brother. You got it. With your white devil beady eyes, man.
Hell yes. So NJ, I promise I am not gonna change rank. Most of those movies don't let me scare you by saying I could change one. There could be some additions later on down the road. Most of them are going to be the same, but definitely the ring. All right, you guys are the goddamn best. I love yous to death. Let me get this thing off here before it screws me up when we try and get out of here. But hell yeah, man. Hostel 1, 2 in the books. Appreciate the shit out of you guys. And we will see you next time. Ring next week, baby.
That will be quite enough of that.